Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me here. Thank you so much for your for dedicating time for this interview. So to kind of start off, I wanted to ask you, like, if you could introduce yourself a little bit, tell us about your career journey, what made you decide on your career path? Is there anything in particular that you especially love about your job and what you do?
Yeah, my pleasure to do so, Elena. Nice to speak to you and learn more also about your platform and the great services. So to introduce myself a bit, I'm originally from Austria, but right now I'm based in the Netherlands. And between that, I also worked a couple of years in Asia. My journey started after studying business administration in Austria. I had an interest in creativity, but I didn't quite know how to combine these two. So I worked in marketing and business development jobs for a lighting company called Sumtobel. They do high quality architectural lighting.
Mm-hmm.
First in Austria and then in Asia, in China and in Singapore. And I really loved working with architects and with interior designers. But at that time, I was on the business side working with creative clients. And then from Singapore, I moved to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, to work at an architectural firm called UN Studio. It's a very international, quite a big firm working on multiple projects in the capacity of business development. And then after 2 years, I followed one of my passions, which is coaching. So that means how can you motivate someone to reach their own goals?
Mm-hmm.
But then I was thinking, what can I do now with these new skills and my passion for creativity and design? And then suddenly it all fell into pieces that it was the most logical step to start my own company as a business coach for designers. So that's what I do right now.
Mm-hmm.
And also for the last 4 years, I have been teaching in the program of creative business at a university in the Netherlands.
Cool, really, really interesting. Awesome. Well, maybe there's a particular feature or knowledge that you can think of that makes your approach so unique that designers and architects fall in love with it.
Mm-hmm. So let me explain a little bit, because now I run the company for about 5-6 years. And of course, there was a lot of learning. It's a very iterative process. So I also learned that the designers, most of them start from passion. They start because they also, like your artists working for Archicgi, they work for the passion to create, to do artwork. And sometimes then having your own studio just comes along as a logical step of growth. But business is not necessarily something designers and creatives like to do. Absolutely. So that's why I basically tweaked my approach to try to coach designers for the principles of positioning, marketing, and sales, but then in a very playful, in a very creative way. So that could, for instance, mean to draw or to brainstorm in a mind mapping environment on Miro. So to make it easy to do the business work that of course needs to be done, but make it very approachable for creatives.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, to kind of elaborate on this topic a little bit further, we have these two completely different worlds. Like there's a world of creativity, artists, all of these like passion and creative approach and, tools, endeavors. And then we got business, which is oftentimes about certain techniques, financial issues, paperwork, stuff like that. So my question would be, in your opinion, like what does a creative, highly qualified architect or interior designer needs to become a successful business owner? Is there like, are there particular steps they need to take? Is there a certain roadmap that you suggest them taking?
Mm-hmm. Well, good question, Elena. Thanks for that. Yeah, there are logical steps, and of course, it is also an iterative process. There might be some back and forth based on learning, because only if you go out and share who you are, what you do, you can then iterate and improve your pitch, for instance. But the most logical steps are first to look inside and reflect on yourself. Who am I as an interior designer, for instance?
Mm-hmm.
What drives me? And I love the simple model of Simon Sinek. Maybe you're familiar with it, with this golden circle that reminds us to focus on the why. So also to share the drive and the passion, why you do the work you do, to connect. Because after all, even if you work for companies, it's still a human to human business. In a service like design, it's providing a service, it's always based on trust.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it's very important to connect with the person you serve. So the first step is to look inside and be very clear on why you do what you do. And quoting the circle, why you do what you do, but also how you work. So that's the approach. And then the outer circle is what you do. So sometimes that is the easiest to define. For instance, you mentioned interior design, but then the approach is, okay, so how do you do it differently? And why do you do it? What drives you? What is your vision? So once you are very clear about your profile, that could be articulated in a very strong pitch, for instance, of what you fill in LinkedIn in this headline, be very clear about who you are, but also connected with whom you serve. And the value proposition is a very helpful one-page canvas. It's the core of the business model canvas. And in short, it explains how I continue your example of interior design, Elena, how an interior designer solves problems for his or her clients. So it's connection on how interior design brings your client a step forward. So that is the value proposition. So that is already connecting your skills, expertise with needs in the market. And then, of course, it's the question how to market it, how to approach the right people, being clear to define the target niche, and then establishing these relationships built on trust, built on serving them. So that is then the marketing and the sales part.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's a really interesting information to share. My next question would probably come out of this one. So you mentioned that they need to sort of think of a distinguishing feature, what makes them so special, what makes them stand out. And my next question would be, like, once they have decided on that, like, this is my personal particular feature that I want to highlight, I want to stress that this makes me different from other studios or designers or architects. What would be the means to kind of share this information? And would you agree that maybe LinkedIn would be one of the best means to kind of reach out to people, to connect with them? And if yes or no, then why?
Yeah, well, yes, as you said yourself, it's very important to be clear on how you differentiate yourself, because there are a lot of designers, not just designers, but in any kind of profession, a lot of service providers. So it's very important to start with this first step, to look inside, to be clear about your profile, because there lays the answer to how you're different, and how, that's even more important, why is this relevant to your client? What is the added value that you have as an interior designer, for instance, a different approach? What is the client value of that? So if that is clear, a logical question to ask is, where and how can I create these right relationships with my clients? And yes, the chance is, let's say if we think you are an interior designer for, let's say, the hospitality industry, the chances are quite high that the decision makers in this hospitality company, let's say it's a large international group, the chance is quite high that their design manager or marketing manager, whoever is responsible, is on LinkedIn to do their job, to connect. So it's always very important to think not where do I want to be and which platform is most fun and maybe most visual and most inspiring. The crucial question is, where are my clients?
Right.
Because if you are where your clients are, then you're visual, you're present, you can start a dialogue, you can be visible, sharing your work. And that's already a hint to the services that Archicgi provides. It's important that you are where your clients are and you're not where you think it's most fun, because that's great for your private time. But think very strategically, where are my clients in, of course, now you mentioned LinkedIn as an online platform. And yes, I think if you serve business clients, I think it's the #1 platform, of course, as well as offline events like trade fairs, architectural events, etc. But it's very important to ask the question, where are my clients, and not where do I want to be?
Yeah, and unfortunately, with the pandemic, we didn't get as many events and on-site meetings this year, and I mean last year, and probably not going to get this year. And hopefully things are going to get back to normal eventually. But since we're kind of moving the business towards digitalization, kind of digital communication, is there maybe a few is there an advice or maybe some tips that you could give designers, architects to manage their LinkedIn profiles, to kind of be to target the right audience, to stand out? Is there anything that maybe from your experience you've noticed that can make a huge difference, but people are not paying enough attention to it? So things like this.
Good question, Elena. Yeah, that's a very important topic, because sometimes we think about LinkedIn. Of course, it's our, let's say, interactive business card, networking platform. But sometimes we think in, okay, we should show what we do, who we are. So the first logical step is to fill in your role, this official role that you have in your email signature if you work in a bigger company. But that is a designation to probably it was on a vacancy, on a job profile, but that is not very interesting or relevant to me. If I put myself in, okay, I'm a potential client, I want to, let's say I have the budget for a nice villa somewhere in Spain, and I look for an interior architect or an architect for the house, including interior, then it's important that I get a feeling, oh, this person is for me. This is exactly someone like that I have a click and that we are on the same page. So just putting, let's say, interior architect, wow, that's I can't connect with it. It's just a description of what the person does. But if you are very wise and, for instance, formulate in your headline, let's say, specialized architect for second home dream villas in minimalistic style, whoa, then I feel, whoa, that's for me. So that means that it's not an architect for everyone, but it's for someone, for the client who has a budget for a second home. And I think I did mention minimalistic style, for instance. Then it's clear, okay, this is not a classic style, and this is something that appeals to me in this example. So to sum up this answer, put yourself in the shoes of your ideal client. And even though you might think, yeah, but Claudia, I don't serve these clients yet, then still put yourself in their shoes on whom you would love to serve, and then describe what you bring to the table. What can you as an architect realize, which kind of dream?
Sure. Thank you. I was also wondering if maybe there's anything peculiar you wanted to mention about creating an effective LinkedIn marketing strategy. And by that, I mean, like, we already have our profile. We know our particular, features, what differentiates us in the market. And now what do we do with that, right? Like, how do we approach advertisement? How do we approach reaching out to our potential clients? Is it constant posting, or is it direct emails, or, you know, that kind of thing? So how do we develop a marketing strategy that is not overwhelming, but at the same point, it's like effective, it brings us together with our clients, and it helps us to reach out to those who are actually looking for our services?
Yeah. As I mentioned before, architectural services and design services are it's a service provided based on a briefing, and then it's basically the trust in the architect to design a dream home or a dream hotel, whatever is requested. So I think it's very important to build this trust, build on expertise. So if we connect back to this example with the specialized architect for second homes, holiday homes with a minimalistic style, then it's good to showcase how you work, and also the results, like how can you translate a client's dream into then a final, of course, the final building, and along the way also the different stages of concepting and designing. So building this expertise, showcasing how you work, which results you create, and building on this trust. So the most important is, again, putting yourself in the shoes, the empathy, to understand which worries, which selection criteria might the client of this minimalistic holiday home villa have, that he or she wants to feel taken care of. So if you are able to basically speak to your client's needs, if you know them and then speak to them, you can, again, with different forms of media, you mentioned a couple of them on LinkedIn, it could be a blog, it could be different posts. Of course, visual material is nice, and also architectural animation could be shown. So there are many different ways to do it. It's also possible to do a live maybe interactive viewing with LinkedIn Live, this new streaming platform. So I think there are multiple ways, but the question is always, who is your target client, and how can you position yourself as that you are the specialist, the most trusted and the best designer to fulfill their dreams? Because at least for homes, it's often that this is a very meaningful work of an architect.
Absolutely.
And you want to invest in an architect that really reads your mind.
Sure. And I mean, I totally understand that each artist, each architect, every single designer would have their own personality, their own professional approach. But I was wondering if perhaps there are maybe some unified like rules or tips that you could give in regards to planning their content creation, their posts, whether it's their blog or LinkedIn page or Behance or anything like that. So is there any unified approach that could be recommended to all of them, like without regards to their peculiarities and individuality? Is there anything that will work for everybody that can be given as universal advice in terms of the content plan?
That's a difficult question to answer, because I'm not sure if there's a universal this is the strategy to follow, because I think it always depends on whom you serve. But for sure, what is in common is that no matter whom you serve, your client is always a human being, and human beings, they all have certain kinds of needs, and the better you understand the needs, and that could be this holiday home owner, it could also be in a huge hotel group, international, a project director for a new huge hotel in a metropolitan city, still they are all human beings with certain needs. And after all, no matter if you have businesses as clients or a family or a corporate, they all have certain goals in their minds. So this, let's say this new luxury hotel location, the person responsible for this project director, he or she also has certain KPIs. Mm-hmm. And the better you understand how can I as a client be the partner in crime with him or her, and how can we create a successful project, the better you can foresee and ask through what are the true needs. And I think that is probably going to an answer what is a super important skill. I think it's asking through to truly understand what are the needs, because very often we hear this, I've mentioned before, minimalistic style. Elena, probably if I ask you, you have a different understanding of minimalistic if I would ask maybe a colleague of yours. So that's important to ask through. And I think the best way is to do that in a one-on-one live session. So I would aim to move let's say, posting what you're good at, showing your expertise with multiple visual, strong stories, showing your expertise, why you serve a niche and how you do that. But then always keeping in mind that it should lead to a one-on-one conversation. And probably it starts in the direct messages, and it should ideally lead to, for instance, a Zoom call to better understand what are the specific needs. Because if I, as a client, let's say you are an interior designer, you could ask me through, if I mention a term, you could ask me, okay, what exactly do you mean by it should have a certain feeling? If I say it should have a beach feeling, you could ask me, what do you mean by beach feeling? How could that be? How would you describe a wow beach feeling, for instance? So I think that is a main goal, that any kind of platform, if it's a physical fair, LinkedIn, any kind of platform, should lead to a personal conversation, to connect, to build the trust, to show the expertise, and then land a project.
Yeah, you did mention a very interesting notion that when you say minimalism, your idea of minimalism, like what you picture in your head, would probably differ from what I see or anyone else. So I was wondering to kind of understand and find common ground of this or that particular style, approach, direction. Do you think that visual materials play a very important role, and why? And perhaps kind of an under question to that, do you think sometimes maybe designers and architects rely more on descriptive means of communications rather than visuals? And if so, then maybe how can we stress and show that visuals are crucial, and it's sometimes a lot more helpful to show something once instead of trying to explain it in words a couple of times?
Yeah, wow, a lot of very powerful questions here. So the first question, Elena, was why are visual materials useful? I think if we look at ourselves as human beings, we have two eyes. And maybe you know that from college, university, we learned that, I hope I remember it correctly, about 80% of all our stimulus, that everything we perceive is by the eyes. So that is, I would say, our most powerful, our most used organ in our body, because we perceive the world and we progress the world with our eyes. Of course, there are different ways of visual. There is paper and digital, 3D and immersive. So there are many, many layers. And for sure, the immersive and VR, there is a lot of future potential. to place yourself in a building, but for sure visuals are super important because they make you, and with you I mean then the person using the building, the new homeowner, or the hotel group that wants to feel how is our brand perceived in this new location. It's a very important way to make a concept that is in the mind of an architect tangible. So it is at beginning, it's probably some sketches, but then the more the fidelity increases and the clearer the final concept is, the more you are able to immerse yourself in this building. And I think that's something that can be very powerful, because let's say again this example from before, this minimalistic summer villa. If you as an architect bring me there virtually and I feel this beach living room, then there is a emotional bonding, and then you brought me already along to this future state of this will be a reality. So I'm still here in the now, but you brought me along to this future, and there is, I think, a very strong emotional connection that you more or less fall in love with a certain feeling, maybe even not possible to describe, but it just makes you feel. And that is very powerful, that renderings, photorealistic renderings, enable to bring the person from the present already to feel the future. So yes, it's very important. Another question you had was about the right balance between text and images. There are different types of people who progress information in different ways. So I think it's not good to only focus on visuals, because you might lose the clients who want facts. There are still people who focus on the numbers, or who want to see, who progress text. So I think it should be providing both, but maybe presenting it in a way that there is, let's say, some basic visual information, basic text, and then elaborate more depending on what the client or the reader wants. Yeah, so I would say it's about both, but for sure, human beings processing our world with the eyes, it's this wow feeling you want to create with the rendering.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, I would probably kind of rephrase this, that you need visuals to kind of catch the attention of the viewer, and then you have your text to explain what you mean by this image and what is it exactly that caught their attention.
Yeah,
kind of.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you did mention CGI renderings. So I was wondering, apparently a lot of architects, designers are using CGI and utilizing all of the like digital tools available nowadays. But there's still a lot of companies and individuals like freelancers who are kind of a little bit superstitious about renderings. They kind of prefer to use photography, to be actually physically present on site, to take images, like real life photography. So I was wondering, what is your opinion on CGI? Is it better? Is it worse? Or does, does each of them has their own like advantages or disadvantages? And what would you recommend using, if any?
Yeah, I think it's the last one you mentioned, Elena. Each one has different advantages and disadvantages. I think a huge advantage, and I read that on your website, that you offer so very fast delivery. So it's I understand it's collaboration, it's iterative. So in a way, I can imagine it can be very powerful in the design phase to eventually try different directions of design and then have, for instance, 3 options to show to a client and say, hey, where do you feel, what really speaks to you? So I can imagine in the design phase, it can be very powerful for getting to make an idea tangible, and be very crystal clear with the client if this is what they're looking for. So the design part. Of course, all depending, let's say if it's a real estate investment with, a real estate development with investors looking for buyers, then for marketing purpose, I think it can be very powerful to have a photorealistic rendering. So to show as realistic version of the future as possible. And of course, it's not possible to photograph because the building is not there yet. So it is a future scenario. And I think once the building is built, it can be very powerful to do high quality photography to show, wow, this is now the final rendering with real people, with real cars, plants, etc. And that can again be used as a proof that, let's say, the rendering is very similar to the real photograph. So, and that can again, if you remember before we talked about the importance of trust,
right?
That can again build the trust to show, hey, see, I help you translate the client's ideas into this architectural design, and then the reality is almost like, or 100% like the rendering, but then with real people, cars, etc. So I think in different stages it can be used, and I think for the final stage it's always good to have a real photo to show that this building is at the end effect, and it's really built on location.
Kind of a finalizing cherry on a cake. It actually exists. We made it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's up to, I think in a way it should be part of an architectural toolkit to think, okay, what, again, connecting back, who is my target group? Where is my niche? What needs do they have? And how can, which services make sense to go more efficiently through the architectural process. So for instance, an interactive viewing can be useful at certain stages, and then maybe in the beginning it's a static image, and then it becomes 3D, and maybe in the future you will have a room where you can display it on walls or with VR. So I think there are a lot of opportunities to make use of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, this has been really, really interesting and a very helpful, exciting conversation. I really thank you so much for your time. And I will probably have only one more question. Just kind of, if there's anything that helps you stay motivated, that helps you in your career, what drives you? What is your passion? Like, is there anything, if there was just like one message that you wanted to deliver to your partners, your clients, the people that work with you, what would that be? What is that one advice that helps you be successful?
Wow, that's quite a challenge. I will share my life motto with you, and hopefully I can also inspire a lot of your readers and people watching this and clients alike. So my motto is go for progress and forget perfection. And I mean that, of course, I know that in architecture there needs to be perfection in the planning and in the calculation. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is, don't let yourself hold back, because you, in your mind, have this perfect version of where you need to be with your company, with your career. And then if this next step is not matching what you have in mind with your perfect picture, that you say, yeah, but it's too difficult, too complex, and it's not perfect, then it's so easy to do. And I did, and sometimes it still happens that you use it as an excuse and say, yeah, but it's too complicated, or anyway, there are so many people who do it better.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't allow that to myself, because I have the motto, go for progress. So whenever I think, yeah, it's, when I hear myself, then I say, no, Claudia, you commit to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Progress means every day a little step further. And that allows me to, to ditch this, oh, it needs to be perfect version of what I have in mind, but just do it step by step. And then in the learning, in this iterative progress, it anyway leads you to where you want to go. And that's ruling back to the beginning of our conversation. It's in the why. It's in the why you do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
That is your compass that leads you in the future.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. And I hope those who are going to be watching this interview are going to get inspired. And thank you again for this awesome conversation. It's been a great pleasure. I hope we can sit down and talk like this more times again, sometime soon.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Welcome.